Well, thank you, sir, for coming out today.
All right.
Just tell a little bit about what the project is. I'm sure you're aware of it. These are basically interviewing people that have lived in or interacted with the East Wilson community pretty much over their whole lives, and pretty much over the past 50, 60 years.
Okay.
And we just want to get a lot of those experiences and reminiscences from people, and kind of get a little bit of history that a lot of people don't know about around here. So to get started off, if you could please just let us know what your name is and how long you've been here in the community, and how long your family has been in this area.
Okay. I'm Frank Jones. Basically, within the city limits, I've been within the city limits for the last, 45 years. But I was born in the county, Wilson County, and migrated from Wilson County at an early age. And was in and out of Wilson as a child. I've been in and out of Wilson all my life. And ended up going north as a child, and then migrating back here in 1966 with the police department, and made that my home. This is where I've been since.
What part of the county did you grow up in?
Well, Old Fields, Wilson County.
Okay.
Wilson,
Right. So I'm sure if you lived in that part of the county, you went to a lot of the rural schools that
Oh
were
yes,
out there.
Jones Hill. I was in one of they had the old Rosenwald schools. I went to two of them. We lived on the farm. I grew up on the farm, and there was a school in the community was known as Jones Hill, and three-room school, and that's where I started school. However, in the three-room school, there wasn't enough students. We had one of the rooms was vacant. So in essence, we all had classes in two rooms. It was the first through the 7th grade, and I went to Jones Hill for a year and a half or 2 years. And my father was a farmer, carpenter, and very active in the community. And my father passed at an early age, and we moved off the farm, and we moved up to the Sims community. And my mother bought a house that we still own. It's about run down, but it still belongs to us. And I transferred from Jones Hill to another Rosenwald school, Sims School, which was the very same thing, a three-room school. And so that's the beginning of my stay at Wilson. I think about a lot of times, in particular in Sims, there were two schools in Sims. There's the white elementary school and the three-room colored school, as they called it. And the most interesting thing that I think about a lot of times now, my uncle and my aunt, one was the custodian and the other one was working in the cafeteria at the white school. Well, and there were kids that had to, fortunately, I only had to walk from here to Finch Street, or 2 blocks down. I was at the school, but some of the kids had to walk as far as 3 miles from Rock Ridge. If you know anything about, if you've ever known anything about Wilson County, that part of the county, they had to walk from Rock Ridge to Sims on a daily basis. And I think about a lot of times how it was that we had to, my uncle and my aunt prepared the food and the heat for the white schools. And what we used to do, I never forget, we used to have to get out of, you were the teacher's pet. If you were able to get out a little early in the afternoon and go out in the woods and get kindling to start the fire the next morning. So, and the first child that was in school started the fire. So that was the extent, the difference in the schools, so it was just it was a learning process, and it made you strong for you to be able to come out of that type of environment, and yet you were able to survive.
Being that at a young age, knowing you had relatives that worked in the white schools,
Yes,
did they tell you how different it was compared to where you were at? And I guess at that age, did you really have an idea of the differences, or?
No, not really. You know, you knew, but you didn't. It didn't phase you until you got a little older. You started to say, well, you think about it. There were my here again. They both worked at the school, and not only that, there were children that walked past that school to get to Sims School. So to our school, to the Rosamond School, and it was strange. And we used to come into Wilson. As a matter of fact, I remember my father died in 1945. I was 5 years old, and I never forget Mercer Hospital. Back then, they had the three hospitals. What was it? Carolina, Montgomery, and Mercer. Right. Mercer was the black hospital. And my father was in the hospital at that time. And I came, my older sister, we had a large family. I had sisters old enough to be my mother. And they were very, a close-knit family, so, and my father was in the hospital, maybe 2 or 3 months before. As a matter of fact, that was August of '55. And then the World War, I was in Wilson as a child, as a 5-year-old child, and I cherished that now. Because of the balcony at Mercer Hospital, my sister brought me, and I was the youngest. I'm the youngest of 15 children, all right? I'm the baby, okay? So my sister brought me to Wilson to see my dad. But at age 5 years old, I wasn't able, at that time, you weren't able to go into the hospital. So I parked across the street, and I didn't know what was going on, but there was a celebration going on. And it was in World War II.
Really?
All right? And so, and he came out, as a matter of fact, there's a picture right there. He came out on that balcony and was standing, and I was sitting on Green Street, and I could see him, And that has stayed with me. When I see Mercer Hospital, I get emotional sometimes, but I just think that how things have changed and so forth. And it was good that we had a hospital. There's no question about that, because there was a lot of smaller cities, I guess, outside of what we were most fortunate as we were to have a hospital. And there's a story about that hospital. They had one of the notable surgeons, Dr. Hines. I don't know whether you guys ever heard of him or not, who grew up right there on the corner of Green and Pender Street. There was a stone house there. His father was the administrator for the hospital. He was one of the MASH, Dr. Hines was one of the MASH doctors in the Korea conflict. He was a skilled surgeon. And they say, they don't say, it's a fact, many whites in this county was operated on, was cut by him, but they didn't know it.
They were under anesthesia about it.
Absolutely. I had a cousin of mine, another story I found interesting, being that you get on that. I had a cousin of mine that was at school in North Carolina A&T. He was in the ROTC. And he had a motorcycle. So he rode his motorcycle home to Sims. I don't know if you know anything about Sims, but going out 264, there's a rock wire where they crush rocks and so forth. Okay, there's a hill that you come. He came down the hill and had an accident on a motorcycle. Well, living in the country back then, a car would pass a year, and you hear a rescue squad, an ambulance, which was, there was no such thing as a emergency, EMS unit. So the funeral home provided the ambulance service. So you hear, if you were out in the country and you hear an ambulance, man, it excited you because you didn't know what was going on. And they picked him up. He was bad concussion. And they took him to the wrong hospital. They took him to, they took him to Carolina Hospital. And they were working on him. And somehow, somebody came in and said, wait a minute. He ain't supposed to be here. So they took him out and carried him to Mercer. But he survived.
Right.
Of course, yeah. But it was just the idea. He was very fair with
Right.
What a story.
Yeah. So he just died. He died, and it's been 4 or 5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh. Looking back, and he said you went to some of those Rosenwald schools.
Mhm.
After you arrived at those schools, where did you end up graduating high school from?
Okay, I left Wilson and went to Washington, D.C. I spent a few years in school there. My last year, my sister was in school, graduated from Springfield.
Okay.
That's out in Lucona. Well, back then, there was only, at one time, up until 1951, there was only one high school, black high school in the whole Wilson County. And it's still located right now, Williamson High School. And the kids from all over the county, some of the kids had to get up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to get to school. I think they had about 3 buses, and they tracked. But then in 1951, that's when they closed all of the elementary schools, the Roosevelt schools. And then they made the high schools made 2, Spades and Springfield, which went from 1st grade through the 12th grade. But in the meantime, I had gone to Washington, and I was in school there. But my senior year, my sister had graduated from A&T, and she had got a job here. We had one social worker here. Bertha Carroll, who is still living, would be an interesting interview for you. She's 97 years old. She was a social worker. And Bertha resigned, retired, or what it was, whatever happened, I don't know. She got married and she just resigned. My sister got the job as the social worker, black social worker in Wilson County. All right. So when she got the job, my mother wanted me to come back home. So I was living with my older brother in Washington. So I came back to Wilson in my last year. I attended Springfield.
Okay.
I graduated from Springfield High School. And
What was the differences between the schools up in D.C. to here? Were there much differences?
oh yeah, there's a big difference. To be perfectly honest, I'm going to say some things that you probably will laugh at. Now, I'm not proud of the thing. Boys will be boys, all right? So how I got back to Wilson, I wasn't, we never got into trouble. We used to do little things around in the city. It's good city kids do. And I got suspended from school. And that's when my mother and my older brother and sister said, well, look, you're gonna have to go to North Carolina. I came to North Carolina, and believe it or not, the classes that I took as in school here, I had already had that. Yeah, for example, here you had one language that you could take. You took French in North Carolina in the 11th and 12th grade, I believe. I had Spanish in the 9th grade. I had French in the 9th grade in Washington. And I had I had French in the 9th grade. In the 10th grade, was taking Spanish, But I'm just saying, as far as the whole curriculum was a year, 2, 3 years behind here than it was in the city, in Washington. Now I don't want anybody to think that there was a distinct difference in the racial climate in Washington than it was, because there was differences, mind you, but there wasn't as much as people want you to believe that it was. So.
Once you came back here, you went to Springfield, and I know you mentioned you had this large family, but you were the baby of the family.
I'm the baby.
Pretty much, you were the last one.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
This is early 60s, I take it, or
No,
late 50s? Late 50s.
Late 50s.
And I know that's kind of the beginnings of the civil rights movement.
Yes.
It's starting to boil up
Yes. Yes.
there. You kind of let us know a little bit, kind of what was your involvement in that at that time?
Believe, sometimes you're a late bloomer. Okay. My sisters had determined that I was going to go to college. But I'm like all the young boys back then. I didn't want to go to school. So I left here and I went to New York. I got a job as at Western Electric, which was, I was fortunate enough that I had a brother and a sister that was working at Western, and I had other connections there, and I was making more money than on a job wise as far as finance was concerned, and teachers, primarily anybody, so why am I got to go to school? So, you know, I was doing fine. So I decided not to go to school. The one thing that my first rebellions was in 1963, when Kennedy got killed. I never forget it. I was at work in Western, and I didn't realize at the time that the employees at Western were more upset about Kennedy's death than I was, because most of them were Irish. There was a lot of in Western too. There were 17,000 employees at the Connie plant, and a majority of them were Irish Catholic. So they were really upset, but I didn't realize that. But I went off on everybody and walked off the job.
Right.
And that was my really first realizing that things just, I mean, I knew things wasn't right. Make no mistake about it. But to go to the extent, and because the only thing that we felt, or I felt, was at that time, you know, we got somebody we can at least sit and talk with, and they took it. And that affected me. It really did. It affected, and it made me start getting involved in different things, you know. I ended up, I stayed there for 3 more years. That's why I ended up in Wilson. I left Western, and I went in business for myself in New York, and I lost my business, not lost my business. We bought it, you know, with my business closed. So I happened to come to Wilson. I had an uncle to pass. I was job certain. I was either going to go back to school. At that time, I was still only 25, 26 years old. I had planned if I had gone to Bell Telephone and Con Ed that are in New York, or I was going to go back to school. So I came home to the funeral, and when I got to Wilson, Charles James, the owner of Old Dog Funeral Home, was handling the funeral. So he said to me, "What are you doing?" So I told him, you know, I was job. He says, "Go up to the sheriff department. They are hiring people." So at the time, the sheriff department wanted no blacks in the sheriff department. So I go to the sheriff department, and I walk in, and I tell, you know, I explain to them, you know, that Charles had told me to come up and for me to get an application. They were hiring people, so they let me know right off the bat, no, we're not interested, we're not hiring anyone at this time. So as I was leaving the sheriff department, S.P. Artist, a local businessman whose wife is still living, he owned he's got property all over Wilson. He had a barbershop, it's still downtown, Artist's Barbershop. I met him as I was coming out. He said, "Well, Charles said the wrong place." He said, "It's the police department. Go over to the police department." So I go over to the police department. They give me the application. I fill it out. And he said, the chief says, "Could you stay for a couple of days and so we can run your application and just check your background, and then will you take the test?" So I did. I took the test. I went back to New York. Never expect me to hear anything from him. Lo and behold, in about 2 weeks, I get a telephone call. The chief said, "Frank, when do you want to come to, when can you come to work?" What? Okay. I did not want to leave New York because I had gotten involved in, you know, in a lot of things there in New York, and I was enjoying myself. But my wife, Bobby, at the time was 8 months pregnant. When I was 7 months pregnant, because Freeman was born in October. And this was in early August. This was August the 1st, the last week in July when he called me. And I told him, "Okay, give me 2 weeks." And I ended up coming to Wilson in 1966, and that's where I started working in the police department. And I had one son, and I guess it was just God guided me, and I didn't realize what was going on. I didn't have any idea. I did not want my boys to grow up in New York. You know, after the older I got, I had one son that was born in New York. My next one was. So I came to Wilson, and I set up here in Wilson. I got an apartment, and I had Bobby to come a month later, and my son was born, and it was that was the beginning of my involvement here in Wilson. But I do say this: it was probably one of the hardest transitions that I could make coming from New York as a young man to Wilson.
Now, was your wife from here also?
Now, my wife, we met and married in New York. Her home is in Greenville. She was born in Greenville, but she left Greenville and went to New York at an early age also. So it just so happened we was out and I met her. We married, and she was upset. Everybody, she was upset. But yet I'm glad that was God doing this, and I realized that. Now I realize that. But the first year, what I did, when I came and I started working, I said, I just can't deal with this. So I go back to New York, and I go to the police department. The police department hired me in New York they hired me, and I was supposed to go to work. I was supposed to go to the police academy. They hired me without any investigation and so forth. But that was during the time. Now you got to remember that was during the time that it was. They were hiring black policemen all over the country. These major cities were looking for black policemen, and so I was supposed. They hired me, and I was supposed to go into the police academy. But on that day, a couple of weeks before, I'm not going to go back. I'm going to stick with it, and I stayed with it, and things started happening here for me. I started doing things here and so forth. Got involved in the community as a policeman, and that was a little bit strange. Very strange. I think the first thing that I did, or not the first thing I did, when I first came here, there was 4 black officers. We had 2 officers, all 3 of them on the wall over there. Rudolph Best and Lee Williams. They were hired at 50 or 51. Then Douglas Parks was hired at 54. Garland Reed was hired at 64, and I was hired at 66, but there were 4 officers here. And we were restricted. We worked from the railroad east. In other words, there have been a lot of stories told that's really not true. There have been stories said that we were not able to arrest white folks. That's not so. Because the very first person as an officer, not a senior officer, that I had been here that I arrested for drunk driving was a white. Right. But we were restricted as far as working, and it's I guess that's typical. That if a person you put a person in a cage, or you put anything in a cage, and he's just not gonna break out of that cage. And I think the guys had accepted, and I had to accept what was dealt me because I was a junior officer. So whatever they did, I had to do. And I remember there was a place out on the corner, Thomas Street and Ward Boulevard. There's an Exxon station sitting in there. There's a restaurant out there called the Holly House. Stayed up all night long. But it was notorious. It was known for what it was. That's where all of the bad boys hung out at. I mean, that was it. We didn't go there. We did not go into it. In other words, they had signs up. So, as soon as I got to the point that I was a senior officer, they hired 3 more officers after me. I worked for 3 years as a junior officer. And when I got a partner, when I became a senior officer, what I did, because here we had to work with lunchtime, and particularly at midnight, like during the day, and we worked from 8 to 4, and then from 4 to 12, those 2 shifts, and then from 12 to 8. Well, the 8 to 4, you could go home and eat lunch. 4 to 12, you had a chance to check out the car at lunchtime at your house, because everybody would, not only did we work in the area, we had to live in this area. We were restricted from moving across town. So, but at midnight, You couldn't go home and wake your wife up in the middle of the night to go in the house and wake everybody up. So you went, you had a couple of places here that eat, but I tell you something, they weren't the best places in the world. So I decided what I'm going to do. I said, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to. I'm on the car with a junior officer, and I said, this is it. So I go straight to the Holly House. When I get to the house, I jump out, I call for the headquarters, check me off in the Holly House. Bam, I hung up the mic real quick because I knew they were going to call me back. You aware? So I get out the car and I run into the restaurant and I sit down and I order. I eat. Come back out. Call forward, check me, call forward, the headquarters, I check me back on what else. I forget anyway. Nobody said anything. Nobody opened the mouth. The very next night, the hospital had a coffee shop that stayed open 24 hours. Did the same thing. I went out there. Nobody ever restricted me, said you can't do that. And from that point on, it opened up, being able to move to different locations as a policeman. Not only that, it was like if you got a call, if the guys got a call, then you wouldn't even respond. And I can't deal like this. So if they got calls, I would.
You're crossing those tracks.
You ain't lying. When I got there, I would go. That was the thing that was most interesting. Nobody never said anything, but it was because I don't think it had been challenged, and I think that's the thing that I found so interesting. Even to the point that I never forget when we the first official working in the white community. I was going to the roll call. It was just a standard procedure for us to go to roll call. And they call you out, Frank Jones, Officer Jones, cop 4, beat 4. So that was coming, and you had beat 4, you had beat 2 and 3, which was uptown, you had beat 4, you had beat 5, 6, and 7, you had the east side, west side, south side, and the east side. Well, 4 was the east side, which was standard every year, every day we did that. But 1, 2, and 3 was uptown. It was from Cherry Hotel to Jackson Street, and from the railroad to Jackson Street. So I'm sitting in roll call one that night, and Sergeant Bland, Joe Bland, was the sergeant. He says, "Jones, beat 1, 2, and 3." I looked at him and I said, "What?" Jones, 1, 2, and 3. So I worked that tour, a 2-week tour. Working midnights uptown, and then it was the very next time that we came to day duty. Then we had the little Cushman, little scoop, but the meter maid.
Right.
Okay, well, there's no such thing as meter maid. The officers then were the ones that were handling the traffic and handling the calls uptown and so forth. I go to midnight. When we leave midnight, I come back to 4-12. Well, I came back to the east side on 4-12. And then I went back to midnight again, but the third time, and a month and a half later, I'm sitting in the roll call room when I was on day duty. They said, "Jones, Officer Jones, beat 1, 2, and 3 on the Cushman." That was during the daytime. And this was 1968. So, it just worked its way, I just worked my way right through that. And there were places like, for example, like Godwin's Barbecue, right on. Godwin's is on Talbot Street where what's the name of the seafood? The Moya Seafood.
Okay.
Right across the street from was one of the noted barbecue places here in Wilson. And they had all the service, black folks were service out of the backside of it, on the backside. And people just didn't go into the front. But knowing me, yes, are you kidding me? Oh yeah, I sure did. Anyway, but it was here. I think on the fountain still had color and white on it, uptown. The bus station was colored and white.
68.
Yes, in 66 when I got, yes. There was across the street, there was a restaurant. I can't recall the name of that restaurant. The building is still there. And you can note that there's 2 doors on the building. That reason the 2 doors there, colored and white.
Another one you're talking about, because in the previous interview, somebody mentioned that restaurant.
Oh, yes. So, I mean, it was here. I mean, there was no question now, but I think, I don't recall anybody ever being denied. But you knew. You just knew. You know, it wasn't like it was when I was a child. I remember as a child coming into Wilson, and like the theaters, all the theaters, Carolina Theater was on Goldsboro Street. The Drake Theater was on Tarver Street. Well, 9 cents, I never forget, it was 9 cents to go to the movie. And we went upstairs in the balcony. And in both places. But there were theaters that's the 2 theaters, plus there was the theater here in Wilson, downtown, the Ritz Theater. Well, on the block, we call it on the block, the 500 block. And that was, but then they had there were 2 theaters uptown on Nash Street, on West Nash Street, that was white. Now, before I came here, 2 years before I came here, Toby, Fitch, and GK, and some of their classmates and so forth, they had done Roses. I think they had gone to the Wilson Theater, which is the Fortune Center now, and they had picketed Wilson Theater. I think they had did Roses and so forth, and they were the ones that really, at the time that was in the 60s, early 60s, were the ones that were actively involved. Now, I wasn't here at that time, but they were the ones that were actively involved in the demonstrations and so forth in front of the theaters, the lunch counters. And by the time I got here, people did not, and that was 3 years later, willingly get up and go into these locations. Some of them had the signs and some of them were taking them down. But again, it was like if you put it in a cage and you stay there long enough, you're going to question.
Now, let me ask, when you went into some of these places, were you in your uniform?
Some of them, yes, I made yes.
Right.
I tell you what was funny. I go out there and I love the place. I was telling the guys the other night, I go out to Monticello. Okay, that's one of my favorites. Anyway, when I first came here, they were located on Goldsboro Street, right? Harnett went across the railroad. Woods.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Woods was a location that was the Golden Weed Restaurant, and there was something online that you need to go back and you need to find it. They got pictures. Somebody has posted the Golden Weed Restaurant online, which was that picture had to have been taken back in the early 50s or late 40s, because it's got the signs out front. It's got a sign that says and that was 301 Highway. That was 301 Highway.
Right.
And it had 301 Highway and 42. You can see the sign out front. But right next door to the Golden Weed was Monticello's restaurant. So when I get here, I had been here for a little while, and I want a pizza. So I go to the Golden Weed. I go to Monticello's. They welcome me in. There wasn't no. They didn't hesitate me coming in. I go in, but I didn't have to be in uniform, because being a black policeman in Wilson this time, wherever you went, they knew who you were. Right. That was, you were an icon, to be honest with you. So I go in and I order a pizza, and it puzzled it. He says he couldn't figure out, you want a what? They were positive, but he just couldn't figure out when he wanted the pizza.
Right.
Well, how did I get to know about the pizza? So, I mean, it was
Throw some pig's feet on it.
yeah, but that's it. That's what I'm talking about.
Keep it in.
Yeah. But it was, I mean, all of these streets, all of this with dirt. I was telling my brother, Lovely, here when I came up, this house was sitting over here, and I remember people living in it. I was working during the time people was living in it. And it was, but I'll be honest with you, it was enjoyable. It probably was one of the most enjoyable times of my life because you had an opportunity as a policeman back then. You were involved in the community. There was nothing no more enjoyable than to ride around these streets and see people sitting on the porch, you stopping, rolling down the windows, or getting out of the car, and just having fun with them. You know, you interacted with the people. The same thing with the school system, with Barton. You know, when Barton, I remember, Barton High School was without a doubt the pride of Wilson, of Black Wilson, of East Wilson. Their music department, they had the best of the best. They were known, not in the state of North Carolina, Barton High School's music department with this band and its choir was known throughout the country. I can recall they practiced over on the corner of Vance and behind the school, coming up behind the school. And that's when, in the evenings, when they practice, you walk out, you go outside, you park over there, and people be all looking at them, just watching them, you know, go through their routine practice and so forth. When we lost that, I mean, it really gutted the community. I mean, you know, there are issues that sometimes that you don't have to deny a person. Sometimes if a person has something, if you just take it from them, then that does more, you know, that'll do more harm. And that you remove what you feel like that they don't need, and you want to improve what they've got. So what you do, what you got, you feel proud of what you got. For an example, in the country, and I'm sure the kids that went, because I stayed here, I stayed here in Wilson quite a bit most of the times. Even though I was living in the country, I knew most of the kids that went to Dartmouth. And we used to get books. When we were in school, we get books with pages torn out, other names in it, you know. We got what they did. Football team, you know, whatever you got. We got what? Coon, Rock Ridge, Blue Common, Wooded, all those schools they wanted. Once they used it, then we got it into our school. And but in spite of that, is that desire to survive made the community stick together. I think the worst thing, I mean, and this sounds, I don't want to sound like a racist by no means,
Right.
but I want to be a realist too. When we lost Dartmouth, when we lost the schools, give you a clear example. Fife High School, the last year of Dartmouth, had won the state football championship. Dartmouth High School, the last year in its existence as a high school, won the state football championship. Both schools were state champions, 4A, the top schools, 4A black, 4A champ, and white. Well, it's obvious there were enough students in Wilson to have two schools. However, what they did, they took Dartmouth, made Dartmouth one grade, the 10th grade, and they made Fife 11th and 12th grade. Now, that was, they were not willing to let Dartmouth maintain its status as a high school because the students would have to come from Eastwood, from Westwood, some of them would to come to Darton. So they made it one grade. I never seen that before. They had, Coon was the middle school. They had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. 10th grade, you go to Darton. 11th and 12th. Instead of them taking 9th, same as anyhow, the way it is right now, 9 through 12, half the students at Darton, half the students at Fife. But they didn't. And that caused, we didn't know the devastating part of what was going on. During that time, I had became, and how they, this, God does strange things. I can't answer. I mean, I'm not here to even question what he does. But I can see, I'm sitting here right now looking at my picture right there. And I'm thinking about, I became a lieutenant. In spite of being one that challenged the system. How? When I came here, they had a baseball, had the city, the police department, had a softball team. I was excellent. I was excellent. As a matter of fact, I came within inches of playing. I did play semi-pro ball. I played a little pro ball, but I was athlete. And when I came there, they had a team. See, one more blacks on the team. Next year, first year I got here in August, the season already started. I couldn't play. Next year, I was Jagger Roberts. So, what happened, I had gotten promoted. Well, let me back up. I got to back up again. I'm sorry. I hate to keep rambling. But,
That's all right. All right. Story's coming out.
In 1968, when Martin Luther King got killed, there were five of us. I had my partner at that time, which I was a junior officer, still a junior officer, was Garland Reed, whose photo was also over there. We were dressed in right here. Okay, we had the soldiers from Fort Bragg riding around on jeeps with live ammunition. We as officers were stationed at different locations. And but during the day at times, this was at night because we were working doggone near 24 hours a day at that time. We're walking the block, and after the third day of what they want to call, they like to call it, the uprising. But it was. Wilson didn't have that much. I mean, we had a few broken windows and so forth, but it wasn't like the cities, the big cities. But we had, and the guys maintained their helmets, the ride sticks, and everything. So I get my partner and say, look, man, we ain't doing no inciting people here. We're gonna have some problems if we don't do something about this. We go to the chief. And the police department, the rest of the white officers got upset with us because we told them, look, we are not doing nothing but inciting problems by coming out like this. The chief didn't want, but he sided with us. And that really, but that's what's so amazing. That's why I brought that out to talk about. Oh, this was in '68. And then in '69, the latter part of '69, what had happened, there was a commission on, it was called Challenge of Crime and a Free Society, that was commissioned by Nixon, President Nixon, which at the time, it was fashionable to hire black policemen because that's when monies began to flow into these little small towns and so forth. And it looked good on their resumes to have black officers. So we went from 5 in 1968 to maybe it's 1970 to maybe 20. They just bam, started hiring them. And in my position but one of the programs that was was requested from the commission that Nixon had appointed. Chief Warren, what is his name? Chief Justice.
Earl Warren?
Earl Warren. Yeah, that was his court that ruled on all of this. And it was, they wanted, that's when the word community policing became a notable issue and it was called community relations. We were promoted. I was promoted lieutenant, and they picked another young fellow who had graduated from Barton College, who was from Raleigh, and he and I became very, very close. And we became a tandem, a team of a black and a white, because they were preparing. We didn't know what it was all about then. That was to say, they were preparing for the merging of the schools, right. Because they knew there's possibility of something going wrong. Now, in our position, we were in a position that in any civil disobedience within the city, as the chief officer, a ranking officer in the city in community relations, we were to be total control of any action taken by the Wilson Police Department. Well, at the merger of the schools, it was such a, it was World War III, believe me. Because what happened when the schools merged, if you recall, I did go to the 19, and they were champs. Darden High had a champ, and 75. Okay, there were 3/4 of the team for Darden's high school team came back, and they were to go over to fight. Lo and behold, what happened? They had Fight High School had a rule at the time, which if you did not report to fall practice by August the 1st, you were not able to play football. They had a month-long preparation and practice and so forth. Well, at Darden, kids straggled in when they could, because 90% of those kids that were playing football during the summertime, when the tobacco season was there, if they didn't get out and make work, they not only didn't play no football, they didn't come to school, because that was their method of making money, not only for them, but helping support their family. So the coaches at Darden just dealt with the issue. If a child got there in 1st of September, he might have to sit out, he did practice as best he could, but there was no set time that the child, and I get that was my first fight that I had within the school system. With the school system. And I go to the football team, the coach, and I say, look, you got to understand, you got some heck of a football players here. But you're not going to get them to come, because they're in the field working. Right. They can't afford, to come. So, but then they kept backing it up. They backed it up a week. But then they did cut it off. And of that team, of Darden High School's team, 2 kids from the old Darden High School got on that Vikes football team. And it just tore the whole, the city just exploded, truthfully. The pressure was so devastating that probably had this not happened, I probably would have stayed with the department and probably would have retired with the department. My partner had a heart attack. The pressure was, because I was catching the dickens from the black community, because I'm trying to work through it, and he really, I felt so sorry for him. I'd pick him up in the morning, and he'd just break down and start crying. And he would say, Frank, they're killing me, because the whites couldn't understand, what was taking place, and he was trying, we were sitting in the round room there at Fife High School, and I had gone out and I had gathered, because it was turmoil, it was just fights in the hall, and the police had occupied the school, And we'd gone out and got the young black kids. We got 5 young black kids and 5 white kids that we thought that we had perceived to be the ones that, the leaders in terms of being able to handle the situation for us, help us handle the situation. And as we sitting there, he had a heart attack. And that left me by myself. So with me calling the shots, and see, I don't mind telling anybody, I made some mistakes. I became hard. And it was one of those cases that they weren't ready. As long as Phil was with me, Phil Houches was my partner's name. As long as Phil was with me, it didn't come across that I'm the one that's causing the shot. Right. But when I got by myself, and I made it clear, I'm not a black lieutenant, I'm not a white lieutenant, I am a lieutenant. And you will respect me as a lieutenant. And it was hard for them to deal with. So it came up to the point that I just gave it up. I just had to walk away from it. You know. But what it did to the community, it just devastated. It devastated. I worked the corner right there, and there are kids that I see right now. Right there, there was a little old store they called Kirby Sutton Store, right on the corner of Carroll and 4th Street, where the kids walking to Barton High School, and we just have fun. They couldn't wait to come because I'd be messing with them, But the community was all together. The teachers that taught lived in the community. I give you an idea. It was such a. The Christmas parade was all done. They couldn't wait. They always led. They always brought Santa Claus in, and that was a major thing, man. Darden High School, everybody would go to the parade just to wait for Darden High School to march down. They come down, leave the school, come down and turn up there at Goldsboro Street, at Douglas Street, and they would join the parade right there. That's where they would take off. But they would come down, they would come all the way down. And that was the pride of the community. We lost all of that. And it just devastated this community.
I'm about to say it's probably safe to say that once that school closed, this community was never the same again.
Never the same.
Right.
It destroyed it. It destroyed it. It really did destroy it. I can remember even downtown, barbershop, my lieutenant bars, he picked them up and he handed them to me. He said, "Frank, these are yours. You deserve them." I said, "You, Chief, thank you." I said, "You were right." I said, "Thank you, because you were wrong and I was wrong. Both of us were wrong for the way that we partied." And he gave me those bars. That evening, I'm looking at the paper, and there's a picture in the newspaper on the front page. I said, "Dak, what in the world?" I said, "This is the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. That I dreamed about him last night. Here, he died that night." I know it sounds, but I'm telling you, he had died that night. And I've often wondered, what was that all about?
I think it was about grace.
Yeah.
Both your stories are about
the
power of grace.
Yes. Okay.
Ms. Jones, we appreciate it.